This is going to be a brief overview of how a regular North American keyboard works on a regular Windows computer. I'll draw your attention to the laser pointer on the picture of the keyboard. We're going to start on the left-hand side and work our way to the right side. Up in the upper left corner of the keyboard, you should see a button that says ESC. That stands for Escape. It's not really used in most programs nowadays, so you don't have to worry about it too much. If you're running a program that makes use of the escape key, you'll most likely have something pop up that tells you to go ahead and press the escape key in order to do something, like at, say, a cash register. Next to that, we have a series of what are called the F keys. These usually run from F1 to F12 and are located at the top of the keyboard. These are kind of like the escape key. They're not used most of the time, but they can be tied to special functions depending on the program you're using. Working our way down, we have what I call the tittle key. Has this little wavy line. That usually means approximately if you see it typed on a screen. It also has another character on it that looks kind of like an apostrophe. Next to that, we have our number keys located at the top of the keyboard there. So we have numbers, and then above them we have special characters. So we have an exclamation mark, an @ symbol like in an email address, a pound sign, also known as a hashtag or a number sign, a dollar sign, a percent sign. I'm not quite sure what this one is. I've never actually seen it used anywhere. An and symbol, also known as an ampersand, a star symbol, also known as an asterisk, and two brackets, a left bracket and a right bracket. Next to that, we have an underscore. That's the little line at the bottom of a line, sometimes used to separate things, as well as the dash, also known as the minus sign. Next to that, we have the plus symbol and the equal symbol. And then we have the backspace key next to that. Backspace is used to remove characters on the screen, or in some programs, used to go back one screen or one page. If you have an internet browser open and press the backspace key, it will go back to the page that you were at previously. Next line down, we have the tab key. This is normally used to move between tabs, or used to move the cursor one tab over if you're in, say, a Word document. Down from that, we have the caps lock key. Using this is similar to holding down the shift key. It takes the work out of having to hold that shift key down. If you're typing in a password lots of times, you'll see a pop-up saying, "Did you know that your caps lock key is on?" Just reminding you that it's on, and that may interfere with your ability to enter a password correctly. Below that, we have the shift key. This will do one of two things. It will either make your letters that you're typing in uppercase, or it will change one of these keys, for example, so that when you press it, it types the character stamped on the top of the face of the key. So if we held down shift and press the 1 key, we'll get an exclamation mark, or if we hold down shift and press 5, we'll get the percent mark. Note that if caps lock is on, it will not type what is on the top of these keys. The shift button is the only one that will do that. For that reason, most people ignore the caps lock key. Below that, we have the control key. It's usually stamped CTRL on the face of the key. This is similar to shift in that it will modify what a key pressed does. Most of the time you can ignore control. It's used on some common keyboard shortcuts, which we'll discuss at the end of the video. In between control and alt is just another key like control. We can ignore it for now. In between those two keys, we have what is sometimes called the super key, or the Windows key, or the start key. You can call it any of those, it's just fine. It usually has a little Microsoft Windows logo on there. If you push that button, it will open the start screen or start menu on your computer. Next to that, we have the space bar. This enters a space when you push it. We have a second alt key. It does exactly the same thing as the first alt key. We have the second Windows key, which does exactly the same as the other Windows key. We have a context menu button, which is almost never used, so you can ignore it. And we have a second control key, which does exactly the same thing as the first control key. Working our way back up around the loop, we have a second shift key, which does exactly the same thing as the first shift key. We have the enter key, On some keyboards that will be listed as the return key, or it will simply have a little arrow pointing down and to the left. Those all do the same thing. It will either move the cursor down to the next line if you're doing something like, say, in Word, or it will press the OK button, or it will open any shortcut that you have previously left-clicked once. Above that, we have the backslash key, which can also insert a vertical line if you hold down Shift and press it, just like those number keys we talked about before. Next to that, we have a couple different types of brackets. We have a square one and we have a squiggly one. Moving down from there, we have the quotation mark and the apostrophe. Next to that, we have the semicolon and colon. Down from that, we have the question mark and the forward slash. This one is known as the forward slash. This one is known as the backslash. If you're ever wondering, that's measured using the top of the line. So this one points backwards, so it's the backslash. This one's pointing forwards, so it's the forward slash. Next to that, we have the period and another bracket. And next to that, we have the comma and another bracket. These two brackets, these two brackets, these two brackets, and these two brackets can be used pretty much wherever you want. Just depends on what type of bracket you want to type. This is on the right-hand side of the keyboard. Now, not all keyboards will have these keys, especially on laptops. We call those 10 keyless. That means that they're usually going to be missing these keys here, or they will be assigned elsewhere, but we won't get into that in this video. Starting at the top, we have a print screen button, which will take a picture or a snapshot of everything that's on your screen and copy it into the clipboard. This can be handy if you're trying to send your computer technician a copy of an error message on your screen. Next to that, we have the scroll lock key. And third on the line, we have the pause key. Scroll lock and pause aren't really used anymore, so you don't have to worry about them too much. Moving down, we have the insert key, which isn't really used very much anymore, so you don't have to worry about it. Below that, we have the delete key. This is essentially the same as the backspace key when you're working in something like Microsoft Word, except instead of removing something to the left of the cursor, it will remove something from the right of the cursor. Next to those, we have home and end. Home will move the cursor back to the far left of the line, and end will move the cursor to the far right of the line. Page up and page down will scroll up and down one page at a time. If that confuses you too much, don't worry about it. You can safely ignore all of these keys in this section. Down below that, we have the arrow keys. These can be used for lots of different things. They're used for scrolling or moving the cursor one character at a time if you're in a word processor. Now we'll move over into this section. This is known as the numpad or number pad. Not all computers have them. If yours doesn't, don't worry about it. Starting up here, we have the numlock button. This will switch these keys from entering numbers to using the special things stamped on the face of each key. If numlock is on, then it will type numbers. If numlock is off, then it will type the special characters stamped on each key. Next to that, we have the forward slash, also known as the division symbol on the numpad. Next to that, we have the star or asterisk. On the numpad, it's known as the multiplication symbol. And we have a dash or minus sign as it's known on the number pad. And we have a plus symbol. Down at the bottom, we have an enter button. It does the exact same thing as the other enter button on the right-hand side of the keyboard. Now we have a decimal. And then we have our numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Most of the time you'll see people in a bank or an accountant use these. With practice, it could be much faster to use the numbers on the number pad than it can be using the numbers on the top row on the right-hand section of the keyboard. Moving to the special symbols on some of these, we have insert, the same as this insert. We have delete, the same as this delete. Page down, page up, home, and some arrow keys. Those do the same thing as these ones over here. So if you're not going to use them, don't worry about it. You're not missing much. And that's an overview of a regular keyboard. Your keyboard may have more buttons on it, or it may have special characters stamped on any of the keys on the keyboard. If it does, don't worry about it too much. You probably won't need them. This keyboard has just the basic buttons on it. It's one of the reasons why I recommend it for most offices, as it keeps confusion to a minimum. Most of the time I shy away from teaching keyboard shortcuts, as it can be a lot to memorize and there is a potential to push the wrong button by accident, but there are a few that I do use commonly, so I thought I'd share them. Most of these keyboard shortcuts are done by holding down the Control key, and you can hold down the one on the left or the one on the right. And while holding that key down, you push the key that the shortcut is activated by. Most of the time this will be written as Control, and then a plus symbol, and then the key. When you see a keyboard shortcut written like that, it usually means to hold down, say, the Control or Alt buttons, and then at the same time press the key that activates it. So when I say Control P, what I mean is hold down the Control key, press P once, then release both keys. Control P will activate the print function in whatever program you're running. Control S is usually save. Control C is copy, Control V is paste, and Control Z or Z is undo. And those are just some of the ones that I commonly use.